let's move on to our module of the week. Josh, you can tell us all about HTTP cache control.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a shameless plug since I wrote and
We
maintained
love those
this
here.
module.
Keep going.
Yeah, but it kind of came out of a need to have finer grained control around cache instruction to the CDNs and varnish layers in a cache strategy. So by default, Drupal will just publish a max age cache control header, and a varnish, a CDN, and a browser will all obey that instruction, and they'll all have the same amount of cache lifetime in the same locations. Now, if you've ever used something like the purge module before, it will tell you that the best practice is to have a really long cache lifetime, something like a month or maybe even a year. The problem with that is if you tell a browser to cache for a year, then it won't come back to your website for new content within that time. And so if you're a news and media site, for example, that your business depends on having fresh content multiple times a day, and you can't invalidate the cache at the browser, that quickly becomes a real problem. So the HTTP cache control module allows you to still set long cache lifetimes at places where you can control purging, like a varnish layer or even a CDN layer, while giving the browser a much shorter cache lifetime, something more akin to the session lifetime, like 5 minutes or something like that. So it also supports SMaxAge, which is a part of the HTTP RFC standard, but also proprietary instructions, like specifically for Fastly or Cloudflare or Akamai. So you might want to check it out. You can also add caching headers to non-200 requests like redirects and 404s and things like that to give some extra caching performance to your Drupal site.
I will definitely have to check that out. That has been something that's been slightly an issue on a lot of sites in the past. So it'd be nice to be able to say, hey, browsers should only cache this for X amount of time, but Varnish, you can cache this as long as possible. I mean, this might become a personal favorite utility module for some of these sites that you have to have that long cache time.
Kind of makes me think like we may need another show about caching. I feel like caching is happening at so many levels nowadays that you got to kind of control it everywhere, right?
Yeah, it's a whole subfield for sure. I actually built the caching strategy for the Australian Open Grand Slam tennis event, and so that has a lot of traffic, especially at the beginning. They also want to push very fresh content. So as plays happen on the court, that data is propagated out to the website. So we have to have a combination of both WebSocket data being pushed, but also purging capabilities. We want to have very high control. So we have something like a 99.99% cache hit rate, even though Drupal's serving this content and the content's changed very regularly. But what a part of that strategy is actually having very strong control around Varnish, which I would consider the local cache, and then having a short lifetime actually at the CDN so that it revalidates at the global nodes more regularly. Because one thing that most people don't think about when you think about purging with a CDN is you can't test that all of the nodes in the CDN have actually purged. So you kind of trust that that's the case, but you don't actually know it. And that's really important, or it really matters in a global sporting event. So we came up with strategies, and I'm happy to talk about this in a different show, about revalidation at the CDN, and then purging at the local cache at the Varnish side, and using that as a way of maximizing your performance.
Interesting.
It's funny. I imagine I just had this like idea in my head of like going to a major sporting website and having like the score be like in your favor on one page and then not in your favor on another page, and just being like, what happened?
What's crazy was we were publishing updates on the score faster than they were broadcasting them on TV. So people could have their apps open and watching the game at home and get updates on their phone faster than they would see the plays. So they'll know like the point was scored before the serve was made.
Wow. That's pretty hilarious.
Too
So
fast.
make sure your caches are in check, people. So words to live by here.